avoid visuals that victimize. In any case, whether it's a man or a woman or children, of course, no visual should victimize. Avoid being sensationalist. And make sure that you, again, it's about going back to the principle of treating people with dignity and respect. In that sense, make sure that your subjects are in full understanding and agreement of you featuring them in your story. So practice very well informed consent when you're writing a story, particularly about sensitive topics. And one thing that we do apply at the UN on communications is the do no harm principle, which means if a story or featuring a person will actually cause any harm to the person because they're going to be in a situation of distress, that's going to put them in danger, that's going to create any kind of pressure for them in their lives, then we don't do it. Do no harm always as you practice your communications. It's a good way to go to make sure that we respect and we don't affect individuals, we don't cause any trouble for them, we don't put them in trouble in general. So this is something also to consider. Is, I want to stop here to say, as we work in communications, it's a continuous process. I said that earlier today. Review, analyze, and repeat, but make it gender responsive every time, more and more. And that includes, as you produce your communication, review and analyze your content to assess how gender responsive is it, and keep in mind the language you use, the images you choose, the type of messages that you convey. Check out who is sending the message and who is receiving it. Mostly, with social media, we have a big advantage of we can review analytics and see who is the audience, who is paying attention, who's listening, who is, who is clicking, who is sharing, etc. So pay attention to who's on the other side, on the receiving end of your communications. And make sure that you bring up gender issues. It's not that all your news or all your stories, all your product will be about gender or women or women's empowerment, but make sure that you bring up and you embed gender into the materials that you're producing, into the speeches, press releases, stories, documentaries, and so on, to make sure that we keep the conversation going, we keep the topic alive in the agenda. So that's going to be very important. Keep your communication and in general your interactions gender responsive. That means that you should apply some of these principles and what we discussed this morning on your website, your social media, communication, speeches, any kind of communication materials. Make sure that include gender aspects, speeches, stories, press releases. Ensure gender inclusive language. We saw already a couple of examples in all instances, not only on your formal communication. Make sure that you start applying these rules to your personal life and you see how much you can change, the benefit it brings. Avoid manuals. I already mentioned the manuals. Please, when you organize an event, bring experts, voices, women, many very qualified women with gender identities that can come and share their experiences. Women can be way more than presenters. They can be raisers, can be experts, can come and explain complex issues as well as men can do. So let's make sure that we present diverse panels and apply these gender responsive principles to everyday life interactions, internal and external communications, and you see how things start to change. With this, I finish. This is not the end of the presentation. My colleague Tricia will now talk about social media.
Hello. Hello, magandang umaga po ulit. Ay, medyo malakas. Earlier, a lot of you said that you want to learn about best practices during today's learning exchange. So from this point, we'll be sharing some of our best practices with you from UN Women's side on social media, and then later this afternoon, Professor Tess will share some best practices from the Philippines naman. So before we start, can we just please have a show of hands? Who among you have personal social media accounts? Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. So, sobrang dami. And I think we are part of the majority, no? And then, sino naman yung parte ng trabaho nila ang pag-manage ng social media? Who among you works on social media? Or has social media as part of your work? Okay, not a lot, but the best practices will be sharing anyway. They're also applicable to developing other kinds of communications products. So, just to give you a background, social media landscape in the Philippines. So, a big majority, 72.5% of the population, are social media users. So, this is data from just this year, January 2023. And among the social media users, there's sort of a balance with 53.5% being women and 46.5% being men. So majority of social media users in our country are aged 18 to 34 years old. So Gen Z, early millennial age group. And these users spend 3 hours and 43 minutes on social media daily. I think we're guilty of being on social media longer, no? For pastime, especially now we have YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, it's really easy to just consume. And with all the, now data is cheaper, we have unlimited data. So it's really, social media has really become accessible. And as we can see, even though majority of users are aged 18 to 34, there are a lot of girls, while 84% say the same of men. So gender stereotyping, it's not only for women but also for men. Yun na nga, yung diniscuss ni Ma'am Tess kanina na women doing housework and then men being macho. So it's still very evident, and we have data to support that. And then unrealistic beauty standards from skin color to body type. So this is something that's not really new for us. So sa Pilipinas na lang, di ba? Especially decades ago, we tend to glorify or look up to fairer skin complexion. So mas maputi, mas maganda. So kasi sa TV, yun yung madalas natin nakikita na if someone is selling a beauty product, the models are always fair-skinned, they're slim. So, actually, girls begin to lose confidence in their own abilities by the time they reach 6 years old. So, bata pa lang, when they're consuming these products, these communications products, what they see on TV could affect them as early as 6 years old. And another gender stereotype in social media is gender as binary. So blue, hindi siya masyadong blue sa screen, pero blue yan, blue for men, and pink for women. And also we tend to show na there are only two genders. That while it's true we have two sexes biologically, the gender spectrum is very broad, and we're not touching upon that because it requires another whole day of learning exchange. While social media could perpetuate gender stereotypes, it could also promote gender equality, and we'll be sharing with you some of our practices at UN Women. So first of all, representation matters. It's important to illustrate people from different genders, ages, skin tones, religions, ethnicities, abilities, everything. Of course, we have limitations, no? If we can only illustrate, I don't know, like 3 characters, it's not really possible to show everyone, represent everyone. But as much as possible, we should try. So this is an actual social media post that we posted on our social media accounts for International Literacy Day. So literacy is not, it's not for a specific gender. It's for everyone. Everyone needs to be literate. But for this specific social media post, you'll see that the characters in the card, so we have women of different ages, skin tones, different hair types, and we also have a woman with disability. So it's really important to represent them in the products that we develop. Just imagine na lang, people from minorities,
Meron pang
see the
nila yan,
products
may
that we
katas
are
pa yan.
producing, and they will feel included. They'll feel that they actually see us. No, communications professionals see us. So, and we are, although in numbers we are minority, we matter. So it's really important. And literacy, it also has nothing to do with ability, disability, no, but it's always good to feature them. So we have limitations when it comes to this. I know a lot of us rely on Canva. So it's not really easy to find matching like different characters with similar art direction. Otherwise, the design will look all over the place. But this is something to keep in mind when we work with graphic designers who actually illustrate and when we're reviewing their products. So, paano naman sa kung hindi tayo nag-illustrate? So we don't use graphic design. This is also applicable when we post photos on social media. For instance, you organize an event and there are different kinds of participants, no? And we share photos of the participants. It's always good to show there are men who attended, women who attended, if it's even possible. We show the different kinds of ethnicities, religions who also attended. So this is not only applicable for illustrations. So second practice is to feature women in different careers and fields. As we like to say, where is women's place? A women's place is everywhere. So this is a graphic that we developed during FIBA World Cup. So FIFA World Cup, sorry, not a sports fan. So here we featured, these are actual illustrations of actual players. So we featured different ones from different regions in Asia Pacific, with different hair colors, different hair types, skin colors. So, and they're doing sports. They're doing soccer, which is not typically featured on TV. So we see more of men playing sports, and then women are in other kinds of sports. So gender sports is another issue, but in communications, it's always good to feature also women doing unconventional or in professions that are not typically portrayed on social media or TV. So as Diego mentioned earlier, language matters. So globally, not only in the Philippines, patriarchy is deeply rooted in our society, even in our language. So it's really important to use gender-inclusive language, just so everyone feels included. So we won't go through everything, but as Diego mentioned, if you have doubts, if you don't know the correct word for it, there's Google, there's ChatGPT. So yes, language matters. Next practice, we are trying to, it was about a campaign on women being career women. So it was it's sort of, dapat, parang, the campaigns are encouraging women to work outside the home. Na parang kaya mo yan, kaya din natin to. If kaya nila, kaya natin. Like we can do it. But on the other hand, another group of women said that, but I don't want to work outside the home. I want to focus on my family and dedicate full-time work, doing care work at home. So it's really instilling the message that, it's up to you. If you want to work inside your home or if you want to pursue work outside your home, the choice is yours. So it's not to tell women what they should or should not be doing. So this is, sometimes it just comes out naturally. Sa language nga, di ba? Saan ka nagatrabaho? Wala. Sa bahay lang ako. Sa bahay lang. Like, I'm only staying at home. But care work is not just work. It's, kung walang babae, kung walang mga babae na nagatrabaho sa bahay, walang sumusuporta sa pamilya nila, what would men who work outside the work do? So, like, women are very vital in doing care work, in also running the economy. So, in the end, the choice should be up to them. Another practice that we do is engaging men and boys, our allies. So women cannot achieve gender equality alone. And this is, gender equality is not only women's issues, it's everyone's issue. So here, this is a code card that we developed for a gender peacekeeping forum that we just had in Korea. And Commander Tyson Nicholas talked about gender equality and women's empowerment. So there are still, I mean, unfortunately, there are still people who who only listen to men. So para makaabot tayo, makalabas tayo sa ating echo chambers so that we can reach more audience, it's also good to hear the perspective of men. And when we do this, hopefully, other men will think the same. O, oo nga, like, bilang mga lalaki, it's also our responsibility to promote gender equality wherever we are, at home, in the workplace. And something more practical is to celebrate women. So there are a lot of international days related and not related to women and girls in all their diversity. So something that's very popular even in the Philippines, International Women's Day on March 8th. And I know that in the Philippines, we celebrate actually National Women's Month. So we buong March. So if we're developing something for social media, it's always good to celebrate that, no? And it doesn't always mean that there should be a lot of work around it. Just sa ating mga, in our organization, in our offices, there are already women working. What if we feature their story? Hear from their perspective. How is it working for that organization or agency? So there are many practices, but it's always good to just be vocal on social media as well that we are celebrating women for other companies, organizations to follow. So that's it for today. I think we have a bit of time for questioning. So Tess, Diego, and I are here if you want to direct any of your questions or just share any of your experiences with us.
Anything that resonated with you, anything that you disagree with, anything that you would like to expand on, or anything you would like to talk more about, feel free to do that if you have any questions. We can also volunteer some of you. It's only a few minutes we have left before lunchtime. I don't know if anyone wants to come in. Don't see any hands.
Ikot ka lang ulit. Wala magtataas eh.
Okay.
Beo, tsakahin mo na.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would just like to commend all the speakers for today's this morning's session. Generally, I get the trope of all the presentations, and yes, what resonated to me most was the alliance between men and women. Somehow, that really should be the what we should amplify the most.
Thank you,
Because
Idol. Pa-share na lang ng live natin.
we should be team, right? But I also get I am
Miggy,
still
Miggy, shout out
baffled
po
by
sa iyo.
the
Idol,
21st
tropang
century.
Ilonggo.
There's still those the first image on the women candidates for any positions. I mean, we already had how many prime ministers who were women, right? So it's nothing. There's no surprise to that. We can actually lead. It's proven and tested. So but sometimes the narratives keeps on among. So the efforts that we're doing here is somehow, in a way, an effort to remind us that really women have been at the forefront of all of this industries and that we are really capable to be to be a partner in nation building and all these world efforts endeavors that's really creating uh, more opportunities for any all of genders, right? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you have touched on a very, very important point here. It's about we're all partners in this. It's not about women or men or any other gender. It's about we're all here in this together. We all deserve human rights. We all deserve visibility, representation, inclusion, and we need to be mindful of it. And sometimes because the way we're being brought up, society, the way it is built and constructed gender relations in a certain way, we always need to be questioning and checking and reviewing. That's why I mentioned review and analyze your communications work and your everyday life interactions to make sure that you are practicing treating people with respect and dignity, regardless of the gender. I think that is one of the things I would like to hopefully you get back home back to your work is remembering that we need to treat all individuals with dignity and respect. And I know you do, and I know in most cases when we miss some element, gender or any other kind of representation, it's not because we have a bad intention, it's because we have biases that have been built through decades, years of being exposed to messages in advertisements, news, and we need to make sure that we again assess what we do, review it, analyze it, and bring try and match as possible to make it gender responsive, inclusive, and more human, humanly better if it's possible. I don't know if
14 na yung...
Yeah, very important yung men as allies. No? Kasi I also have an advocacy group practicing feminist media and wala namang contention. There's no contention that men and boys are really important in the gender equality work. But honestly talaga, what is parang medyo contentious din, no? Sa development sector, sa women's rights movement, even sa LGBTQI movement. Saan ba? Paano? How do we operationalize men as allies, di ba? Kasi parang how do they not take up space? Parang ganun yung conversation din eh. But parang be a support to the gender equality project. So yun yung mga ganong concerns. Siyempre may concerns din yung women and we need to acknowledge that. Yung mga nasa women's rights movement na parang how to balance, di ba? Yung mga ganong pagbabalance. And it's a constant process of always checking up, di ba, with men, what they want to bring to the table, what can they bring to the table, and also to the sector, no? Kunyari, kung papasukin yung women with disabilities, paano ba yung magiging role ng men doon? So it's always the feedback, the constant conversationing that should happen. So para we can move forward eh. Kasi kung nandun tayo all sa question lagi na parang, o baka mag-take up sila ng space, di ba? And then, you converse with each other.
Good
Tapos sa
morning,
work na ginagawa
Bakit
namin,
Pinoy? Good morning.
na-explore ko ba, what
Polo
we
ako,
find parang an important
area
role
ng
of
Ortigas,
men
seminar about
is
in
in
lalaki at sa babae.
documenting
Sa
yung,
government,
parang
seminar po
being
ito
the one
ng
doing the
government
documentation
tugon.
of parang, or doing the work with us on gender-based violence. Kasi doing the work, communication work on gender-based violence really takes a lot of you. You do research or being exposed again and again on these stories of victimization, you know. And parang napansin ko dun within our group, di ko alam. I don't know if this will affect all men, pero yung men, hindi sila ganun, parang because they don't have the experience of gender-based violence, parang there's less risk of them being traumatized, of experiencing vicarious trauma, of having compassion fatigue. Pero syempre, nagde-debrief din kami as a team. So parang that's one practical way of bringing men into the work of supporting women into bringing their stories. No? So yun, constant conversation, that's what works for us. And then, on the point, yung maganda yung point mo na parang yung role of women in society, wala, ano naman talaga siya, it's always been there, di ba? Hindi lang, ang problem dito, hindi siya nasa surface, di ba? Sabi ko nga sa mga estudyante ko lagi, hindi totoo na media reflects reality. O, di ba? May pagganon pa ako. Media reflects power relations in society. Diba? And the power relations in society, may inequalities talaga. There are those who have a voice, who are visible, who have a space in the government. And what we do as communicators is to reflect what we want, diba? What we want, the alternative vision of what we want to be reflected in media and communications.
Thank you so much. We have another comment, a couple of comments on this table in the middle. Microphone is here.
So ito din.
Hello. Yeah, I have two questions actually. Number one, it really frustrates me that even though it is a fact that 5% budget of the total amount of budget of a certain government agency is dedicated for gender development, am I correct? But we still see a lot of communication materials, which is, what do we call this, degrading to women in some sense. I was just wondering on your end as the gender experts, what do you think is the problem? Is it legislation? Is it inclusive? Is it including it into the policy? And second, sorry, at least it's done. With ma'am from UN Women, I'm sorry if sorry, with ma'am from UN Women, ma'am, every government agencies with women who are in position, be it undersecretary, assistant secretary, if people or social media users are not in agreement with what they say, there is always the gender-based attacks. There are pictures of them in bathing suits, even for example, clerks from the front end of that. What are the things that Philippine Commission on Women do to address all of those things, or where can we go to actually report as such? Because I also attended the the MIL event. There are a lot of attacks on different platforms specific to women, and I was just wondering what all of us here can do to address all of those things. Thank you.
I have a little bit of a reflection of the first question. I think there's not a single answer, there's not a single solution. I think it's a mix of approaches. I think we start with this exercise that we're having today by exchanging what we know, what we apply in our daily work with you, and also hear from you on how to apply also these gender lens to your communication. I think that's a good starting point. But of course, legislation, policy, conversation, continuous self-assessment is very helpful, and also bringing. I cannot repeat this enough. If we aim and if we apply this principle of treating everyone with dignity and respect as communicators, we have a big tool, a big capacity to actually start changing things. So that would be my first reflection. I ask you, Professor Tessu,
Ang hirap naman ng tanong. Yung first question ano pa yan? Hindi ko alam na ano pala to, comprehensive examination. Yun muna second question kasi yung mas madali na. So, what you were saying, ma'am, is are examples of gendered disinformation. Lalo na sa mga political leaders because it serves to invalidate, no? Your personhood and their capabilities as a leader. So, dito sa Philippines, meron tayong tinatawag na gender ombud. Sige nga, sino dito who here knows who is what institution is the gender ombud in the Philippines? May Christmas package daw. Wala. Okay. Ang gender ombud po ng Pilipinas ay ang Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines. That is stipulated in the implementing rules and regulations of the Magna Carta of Women. So kung yung PCW, ang role niya is to mainstream yung gender equality and women's empowerment. Ang gender ombud monitors and evaluate yung mga ganitong class, yung implementation. So if there is violations ng mga ganito ang magiging katrabaho po natin. I think based on what I know is yung Gender on Good, which is the Commission on Human Rights. Okay, dun sa first question, yung mahirap, sige. I think marami siyang factors. Tama, I concur with Diego that it's really a lot of factors. No? Number one, siguro let's put everything into context. It is only in 1930 when women enjoyed the right to vote. Prior to that, may panahon nga pag-aari pa tayo ng mga kalalakihan. We were owned by men, di ba? Di ba? During the, ano ba yung mga napapanood natin? Yung Bridgerton, di ba? In Netflix. That's an era. Kailan lang yun? 1800s when we were owned by men. So, let's put into context naman, di ba? Kasi it's important to recognize the challenges and the pushback and the resistance, but it's also important to really acknowledge the gains that we have achieved so far. So, yun. Number one, let's put into context. For me, ang laki na rin talaga ng naiusad natin, no? From that status of being women being owned by men, being subhuman, ang laki na ng ating naging progress. Number two, I think yung problem sa communications is, I don't know if you will agree, but communication work in the Philippines, in development, in governance, parang lagi siyang add-on. Hindi siya ganun ka-important. Sabi ko lang. Di ba? Parang, oh sige, okay na lahat. Tapos, counselor. Parang lagi siyang add-on. So, it's really not at the forefront of yung policy making when it comes to gender. How do we frame the message, di ba? How do we make sure that we are transforming how we see gender relationships? Kasi that's what we do as communicators, No, we reimagine, no? We transform how the status quo is communicated, is relayed to people. So, yun. Ano pa ba yung next? Okay. So, number three, yung pushback and resistance. Alam naman natin na for the longest time, napasa yung Magna Carta of Women, may safe spaces na tayo, na-repeal yung mga sexist provisions sa anti-rape law, nagkaroon ng anti-vowsy law, napasa yung RH. So for the longest time, happy tayo, di ba? Gender equality sa Pilipinas, ang taas natin sa rankings ng gender equality. Tapos, na-reveal na, hindi pa pala. Parang there's so much misogyny and sexism in the society. So, yun, merong pushback, may resistance. Pero I guess ako, medyo optimistic ang tao. I see that as gaining ground. Kasi if there's pushback, di ba, nagkakaroon, yung power creates it's resistant. So if you are gaining power, then magkakaroon talaga ng resistance. And of course, that brings me to the last point na parang because of those na may power speaks resistance, ibig sabihin our end towards gender equality and women's empowerment will not end. Yun pala yung message. Kung makakontinue siya, di ba? It's a never ending, pero syempre gusto natin. Pero I don't think we will experience that. No, yung ganun. Pero it's a never ending work of changing the world, medyo Miss Universe, Miss Shelby, yeah. Changing the world to the vision of the reality that we want today.
Just to add to Prof. Tess's response to the second question, it's online gender-based violence or online attacks are very tricky, no? Kasi because of anonymity, it's not easy to make perpetrators accountable. So this is where outreach, advocacy, education really comes into play. And I'll do a short plug, that starting November 25, we will start the 16 days of activism against gender violence, gender-based violence. So it's a 16-day long campaign, as the name implies, where we raise awareness on different kinds of gender-based violence, including online ones. So in the Philippines, I'm not gonna reveal too much details yet, But we will be working with certain personalities to have a wider reach, to inform more Filipinos that there are kinds of violence that are that are usually experienced by specific genders, and that gender-based violence is not always physical. It could be emotional, it could be online. So this is where, as communications professionals, we can expand our work to also do some advocacy. So we are already going to do something in the Philippines. And if we could get your support in disseminating those messages, the campaign materials, that would be really helpful for us and for everyone. Thank you.
One final question and then.
I have a question. Can we start?
Hello again. I am Jazz and I work with BTV. So I would like to express our appreciation for these kinds of seminars, which is an eye-opener for us. But this comes as a very big challenge for us as communicators and media practitioners because we don't deal only with one variable here. There are very many variables in play. Like in the workplace, of course, what comes into account is the kind of upbringing that each individual brings into the workplace that comes with the values and all that, and also with the policies within the network. All of this come into play. So this comes as a very big challenge for us because I think the challenge here is not only absorbing the knowledge, but actually making this knowledge a second nature to us. Na every time we come up with a material, we have this consciousness already to edit the stories in a slang that is gender friendly and all that. But when you're in the reality of a workplace, fast-paced na, when you're faced with deadlines, sometimes nakakalimutan natin and we forget about these kinds of values that we learn. And then there's also the challenge of dealing with bosses. Like for example, when you're in a place already or in a position, then you have a voice but you don't have exactly the power to exercise or impose changes. Like for example, we have a client, and this client is a big source of income for the network. So, syempre, that client has a say on what is virtually appealing for them. Like for example, they want visually appealing women for their hosts to host the program. So, who are we to question that? It's always the interplay of balancing the income for the network and also the welfare of the workers. It's really very intricate, it's very difficult. So the challenge here is how do we as communicators not only give a gender sensitive message, but within the workplace itself, how do we practice and actually voice out and make into action what we are learning here. So that's a very big challenge for us.
Very, very good question, and yes, you're right. And I think probably one caveat that we need to mention is it's not a day-to-night process. It's not going to change after this meeting. Now everything's going to be gender responsive, even in our work at UN Women. We struggle, we face every day issues, we discuss, we question ourselves, we look at what we did, and then we try to come up with better outcome for the next time. But there's also the reality that as communication professionals, where we sit and where we stand, we have the capacity to influence the final products. We have the capacity to produce a first draft that is already somehow gender sensitive, that it's already inclusive of women's voices, women's opinions, that it's already respectful of women's and men's differences. So I think what matters here is that we bring those together. We take this step by step, and it's not day to night. We will start a process where we can, eventually hopefully, and again, this is why I mentioned review and assess and analyze your content, because the more you do that, the better you will be able to actually, you know, re, reorganize how you communicate and repurpose it and make sure that it's more gender responsive every day more and more. So my advice in general is it's not an easy path. We didn't say it was easy. It's not easy for everyone, but it is a path worth going through, and it's definitely something that we need to start doing and we need to start doing more often as we work in communications, and as we have, as Professor Tess mentioned this morning, we have a responsibility as both government officials and UN officials to deliver for the people, to serve the people that we are working with, to make sure that this our work, which is communications, is inclusive, respectful, gender responsive, and so on. So I think this is a bit of a reflection, but yes, definitely valid question, and it's a process again. It's a long process, takes time. It's not easy, but it's definitely important, definitely worth going. I don't know if my colleagues want to.
Building on then on what Diego said, so I'm building on what he said that we also have the power to influence. But siguro what I can share is the organized community organizing principles on how to actually influence. Because syempre meron tayong mga advocates na, di ba? Then meron tayong mga neutral. And then yung mga talagang mga resistant to whatever we're saying. So in community organizing, and kunyari yung client na yun, we always come into the table as a group, diba? Not as a single person. And the practical approach would be to identify who are the advocates. Tapos the neutral people that we could influence into, uy ma, hindi na uso yan ngayon. Di ba? We could also say to them, this is what the study says, that more the Gen Zs and the millennials are very sharp now. They won't buy into Gen Z. They won't buy into the products who promote sexism, di ba? That promote sexism, gender discrimination, homophobia. So that's one practical way of negotiating that space where we feel that we don't have a say in what we're doing.
You touch on a very important point. This is not only the right thing to do, by the way, and this is something that we sometimes forget. It also makes sense, and you touch on this very good point. Our audiences, more and more, and Tricia mentioned this in the presentation, the majority of people who is on social media is Gen Zs and young millennials, and they speak the language of gender equality. They know, they understand, they respect, and they follow those values, those morals. So if we not only we going to do this, we're going to embark on becoming more gender responsive because it's the right thing to do, but also because it makes sense. It will make our communications more popular, if you like. And at the end of the day, what we want is for people to see, to read, to appreciate what we are producing as communicators. So it makes sense not only from a human rights perspective, but also from an audience perspective. So very good points. Thank you for raising that. And I think with this, we end our time for now, and we will have a second part in the afternoon. But I think now it's lunchtime. So thank you very much.
Maya ulit magkaan siya. Si Tess Cruz ulit. Picture.
Wala nang patayan ng live. Walang patayan ng live. Kahit nakabreak ako. Kung sino yung
Ito yung nangyari niyan. Lumabas.
Very good, very good.
Walang viewers na.
Sa YouTube.
Saka YouTube siya eh.
bawal na sa Facebook yung
Bawal na yung ganyan eh. Hindi na, tulog yung kupal ulo.
Ay, bawal na?
Hindi na siya pwede ito. Hindi na pwede.